For centuries, deep within the dense jungles of Central America, massive stone cities stood silently beneath towering pyramids and elaborate temples. These were not the ruins of a primitive society. They were the remains of one of the most advanced civilizations of the ancient world. The Maya built enormous cities, developed one of the most sophisticated writing systems in the Americas, and calculated astronomical movements with stunning precision. At their height, millions of people lived across their vast network of kingdoms. And then, something strange happened. Around 1,100 years ago, many of their greatest cities were suddenly abandoned. Temples that once hosted grand ceremonies fell silent. Palaces that once housed powerful kings were left empty. Entire urban centers were swallowed by the jungle. So, what exactly happened? Why did the Maya civilization disappear? The truth, as historians have discovered, is far more complicated than a single catastrophic event. To understand the mystery, we first have to understand just how impressive the Maya truly were. The Maya civilization began developing around 2000 BC, but its golden age, known as the Classic Period, flourished between 250 and 900 AD. During this time, powerful city-states dominated the region. Cities like Tikal, Palenque, and Copan became thriving centers of politics, religion, and trade. These cities were not small settlements. Some held tens of thousands of people. Massive pyramids rose above the jungle canopy, covered in intricate carvings that told the stories of kings, wars, and gods. The Maya also developed a complex writing system made of hundreds of symbols. Using this script, they recorded history, royal dynasties, and religious rituals. Their knowledge of astronomy was particularly impressive. Maya astronomers could predict solar eclipses and track the movements of planets with remarkable accuracy. They even created a sophisticated calendar system that measured time in multiple overlapping cycles. But despite all this knowledge and power, their civilization was surprisingly fragile. Unlike empires that were ruled from a single central authority, the Maya world was divided into dozens of independent city-states. Each had its own king, its own army, and its own rivalries. Competition between these cities often turned violent. Wars were common, and rulers frequently fought to capture territory, resources, and prisoners for ritual sacrifice. For centuries, this system worked, but eventually, something began to go wrong. By the late 700s AD, signs of trouble started appearing across the Maya world. Inscriptions on temples and monuments began to decline. Construction of massive pyramids slowed down. And in some cities, royal dynasties suddenly vanished from the historical record. One possible explanation lies in the environment itself. The Maya civilization depended heavily on agriculture, particularly maize. To support their growing populations, large areas of forest were cleared for farming. Over time, this widespread deforestation may have caused serious environmental damage. Without trees to hold moisture in the soil, droughts became far more devastating. And unfortunately for the Maya, a series of severe droughts appears to have struck the region around the same time their cities began collapsing. Scientific studies of lake sediments and cave formations suggest that Central America experienced several prolonged dry periods between the years 800 and 900 AD. For a civilization that relied heavily on rainfall to grow food, this would have been disastrous. Crops failed, food shortages spread, and as resources became scarce, conflict likely intensified. Wars between rival city-states may have grown even more destructive as rulers struggled to maintain power over increasingly desperate populations. In some areas, archaeological evidence suggests that fortifications were built hastily, indicating that warfare had become more frequent and more dangerous. Political instability may have pushed entire populations to abandon their cities in search of more stable regions. But drought and warfare were probably only part of the story. Another factor may have been simple overpopulation. Some Maya cities grew incredibly dense during the Classic period. Supporting tens of thousands of people in a tropical environment required careful management of land and water. As populations expanded, the pressure on local resources increased. Eventually, the system may have reached a breaking point. When food supplies dropped and political tensions rose, urban life became unsustainable. Slowly but steadily, people began to leave. Some migrated north toward areas that still had reliable water sources. Others may have dispersed into smaller rural communities. And as the population vanished, the once great cities were reclaimed by the jungle. Trees pushed through palace walls. Roots cracked ancient stone staircases. And within a few centuries, many of these magnificent urban centers were almost completely hidden from the outside world. But perhaps the most important thing to understand is this: the Maya themselves did not disappear. Contrary to popular belief, their civilization did not vanish entirely. Millions of Maya people still live today across regions of Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, and Honduras. Their languages, traditions, and cultural practices have survived for thousands of years. What collapsed was not the people, but the political system of powerful city-states that once dominated the region. In other words, the Maya civilization did not end in a single dramatic moment. Instead, it slowly transformed. Cities were abandoned. Power structures collapsed. And the jungle reclaimed what had once been some of the most extraordinary urban landscapes in the ancient world. Even today, archaeologists continue to uncover new discoveries hidden beneath the forests of Central America. Using modern technology like laser scanning, researchers have found thousands of previously unknown structures buried beneath thick jungle canopies. Entire networks of roads, fortifications, and agricultural terraces are still waiting to be explored. These discoveries suggest that the Maya world may have been even larger and more complex than historians once believed. And yet, despite decades of research, the full story of their collapse remains one of history's greatest mysteries. Was it drought, war, environmental destruction, overpopulation, or perhaps a combination of all these forces acting together? Most historians now believe there was no single cause. Instead, the fall of the Maya cities was likely the result of multiple pressures building over time, until their society could no longer sustain itself. But one thing is certain: the ruins left behind tell the story of a civilization that was far more advanced than many people once imagined. A civilization that built towering pyramids in the middle of the jungle, tracked the movements of planets across the sky, and left behind a legacy that continues to fascinate the world more than 1,000 years later. And as new discoveries emerge from beneath the dense forests of Central America, the mystery of the Maya may not remain unsolved forever, because sometimes history's greatest secrets are simply waiting to be uncovered.